Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. I may not even need this. I could probably use my t-shirt voice and be okay, but I'll go ahead and use this for tonight so that you can hear very well. I hope you enjoyed the tour. If there's anything that you would like to see even after this, please feel free to do so. We wanted to make sure anybody who wanted to look around had that opportunity to do that. And like I said, if you had any questions, Mr. Helms, our new assistant principal, is here, and he has a wealth of knowledge of this building, because I think he puts in lots of steps every day in here. So he is awesome. I also want to introduce to you, before I get started, Michael McBride from Stevens. He's going to share some information with you tonight, and also Grayson Bigger from the Intermodal and also Farmers Merchants Bank. So they will also be sharing some information with you as we get started. To give you a little background information, talking to you about where this all began, because I think it's important to see the beginnings, because it's not something that just happened overnight. It was something that was in a long time planning, looking at the process. And one of the things that we have to do as a school district is we have to make plans for long term. I mean, you would think that anyway, but it is required. We have to do that. We have to turn information into the state to tell them our expectations, how we're going to manage our buildings, what we're going to do for upkeep, maintenance, or if we need to do some new construction. So those are things that we do. This began 2016 with a master plan. We were looking at two schools, Pocahontas Elementary and Pocahontas High School. And the reason we were looking at those two campuses was because they were the older of the two, or older of all the campuses that we have, and trying to decide which ones that we were going to work on first. Alma was selected because it was the oldest, and it was overall oldest and also in need of most repair. Plus, this is where we were seeing the most growth. And so that's why that campus was chosen. Is this too loud? No. This is loud up here. And we had a need for space. Our numbers were growing then. Numbers kind of leveled out with COVID and that kind of thing, but we are still in need of space because we still have some campuses where we do not have any available classrooms, and we're even using a couple of labs in the high school building for classrooms. So space has continued to be an issue. Whoops, there we go. A question that we're often asked is, why do we not ask for the millage, all of it at one time? And a big response to that is just being fiscally responsible and efficient. We wanted to make sure that we didn't ask for too much, or that we didn't ask for too little and then have to come back and ask for more. Because, like I said, we wanted to make sure that we were asking for a proper amount without too much or too little, but also included in that is we did not know if we were getting partnership funding from the state yet or not. And so we found that out later. And that partnership funding that I'm talking about, you've heard the $9.3 million that we are receiving from the state for this project. Once we knew that, then we felt like we could better make a recommendation and, like I said, be fiscally responsible and be responsible not only to our district but our patrons, taxpayers as well. So we look at a plan. It's called a POR, the Program of Requirements, and that is from the state. It drives everything that we do as far as our building process goes. The state gives us these requirements. It tells us how many classrooms we have to have. It tells us the size of our classrooms, the amount of space, like the size of space that's needed, cafeteria, counselor's office, nurse's office, kind of things that a school would need. It is in that POR, and it's directly aligned to the standards. It is driven by the facility standards. It is something that, like I said, that we have to go by, and as it says on here, as you can see, in that second bullet point, the state will not provide funding for any building that's larger than what's required on the POR. Where did it all begin? Going back again a little bit, looking at the conditions of our buildings and what the need was. We have some aging buildings, but when you look at them, yes, they have been well maintained, but they do not necessarily meet our needs anymore. And so that's where we had to go in and look and say, well, how can we make this better? How can we be more efficient? Again, we talked about spacing needs, but we also have to look for long range, 10 to 20 years out. This is not a today thing. This is not a tomorrow thing. This is not next year, but it's 10, 20 years. So it is one of the things that we have to think about is where do we want to be? What do we want it to look like? What do we want our campuses to look like on down the road? Not just today, not just tomorrow. You are now in phase one. We're sitting in it. Phase one has been completed. We have the new elementary. It has been, I mean, you've walked through it, you've seen it. The teachers, the students, parents are very happy to be here. There are a lot of benefits. I could give you numbers, but I don't have them with me as far as like looking at numbers of within research about new facilities and the benefits to students. But there has been research done, not here by us, but nationwide, that has proven that students often do better in newer facilities because you have access to better technology, better access to just the environment. If you think about it, this facility, I'm sure if you look around in the classrooms, you're going to find plenty of electrical outlets. I bring that up because if you're in the high school building and you're in the older part of the building, there may be 2 outlets in a classroom, where in today's world with technology, that really isn't very feasible. Also, as we are updating, some things that we need to think about is the, like I said, spacing, the money that we have that is going to be provided through the partnership funding, and then the historically low interest rates, which Mr. McBride can talk to you about, and then also the plan to put grades 9 through 12 in the high school building. It's nice for when I was a principal, it would have been nice to have grades 9 through 12 in one building, simply because, for one, they're all earning credits, and that's kind of a mindset of, you know, 9th graders being in the junior high, they don't automatically think about earning credits as they move forward through high school. And then once they get to high school with 10 through 12, then they begin to start thinking about it and think, oh, wow, I should have thought about that before. So that will be nice. But an even better point to that is the security that you have with the 9 through 12 being in one building. With the 9 through 12 being in one building, we don't have as many kids running back and forth to the campuses because we also share teachers. We have some 9th grade teachers who teach some of our 10th graders. We even have a few 11th, 12th graders who may have to take like a health class that they missed for some reason, so they're running back over to the junior high. We also have 2 high school teachers right now located in the junior high because we do not have a space for them at the high school. So those kind of things as well are very beneficial. Even though we will receive state funding now, the question has also been asked, so why do you need a millage? Well, it's kind of like buying a house. The millage is kind of like a loan in that sense, and most people who go buy a house need more money than what they have in their pocket. And so that's where the millage comes in. We've saved some money for the project, but even with the money from the state, there is still a little bit of a shortfall, and that's where the 3.44 mils comes into play. And I'm going to let Mr. McBride talk to you about this chart.
Hi there. My name is Michael McBride. I'm with Stevens Inc. I serve as the district's municipal advisor. I work with about 35 school districts throughout the state. My firm represents about half the school districts in the state doing things like this. But really, what I kind of wanted to do before we look at this chart is I kind of wanted to take a step back and expand on what Lisa was just talking about. So how did we arrive at where we are? So I think the need has very much been established. There's a need for these types of facilities, and there is state funding that will help facilitate that. So how do I kind of fit into this piece? I think that's helpful. So you have a construction manager, an architect, and you go through all these things with the state. You establish roughly what you think a project will cost, okay? Then you start backing out pieces of that pie. And so you say, okay, we've saved up some money. Well, let's deduct that out of the total. Okay, the state is giving us some partnership funding. Let's deduct that out of the total. Let's look and see if we can restructure any bonds or anything of that nature. Well, let's back that out of the total. So then you end up with roughly what you have to finance. And again, to kind of go back to your own personal finances, it's just like, what can you put down on a home? It's a little bit more complex because there's state funding involved, but say you can put down 20%. Well, then you finance the rest, right? And then you figure out, well, what's that monthly payment going to be? Well, that's where I come in. I help the school district determine, well, what's really going to be, because we're talking more school years than anything, what's that annual payment going to be? And so once you determine what that annual payment is going to be, you look at the district's tax base, which has been growing, which is very helpful, but then you're able to determine from that tax base what amount of tax would be required to help pay that annual payment. And so that's how the board arrived at the 3.44 mil increase. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. We have to finance a component of this building, or our house, however you want to look at it, and we have to make sure that we can afford that so we can still maintain the district in the manner that we want to. And so that's where the 3.44 mil ask comes from, and that's how they arrived at it. When I say they, I mean your school board. But what this chart shows you is, okay, 3.44 mils. What is that going to cost me as a patron? And the key concept that needs to be established here is the difference between appraised and assessed value. And that's the first two columns you see here. So the appraised value is roughly what you purchased something for. Now, if you bought a house 20 years ago, that appraised value has definitely gone up. If you bought a truck 2 or 3 years ago, that appraised value has gone down. Well, so appraised value, but for our purposes, think roughly what you bought something or what your county would say it is worth. You take 20% of the appraised value to arrive at the assessed value. That is your own personal tax base. So whatever you own, the personal and the real, so real being your real estate, personal being anything that is very expensive but easy to move is the easiest way I can describe it. Think your car, boat, four-wheeler, things like that would fall into your personal property category. So you add those two together, what you roughly paid for it, or what is appraised at, and you take 20% of that number. That's your tax base. So then you can take the new proposed 36.25 mils, which is your current millage rate plus the new 3.44. If it is your primary residence, it is your single home, you can deduct out $375. That's the homestead tax credit that the state gives you. And then you can see what your tax bill would be. But most importantly, you need to focus right here on these two columns, because that shows you roughly what your increase would be from the 32.81 that you are currently at to the new 36.25. So for the most part, people in your district are going to fall somewhere in this $100,000 to $175,000 category, meaning you're looking at an increase from, let's say, $70 to $120 annually on your tax bill. Broken down to the right, you can see monthly what that would do to your mortgage, your monthly mortgage payment. So hopefully that gives you a really good idea of how you got there, and why the ask is the way that it is. It's to help facilitate the payment of the new loan or bond issue. And just to speak to that, the bond issue, just a moment, two things are extremely important to understand. One, as we've discussed, interest rates are at historically low levels. So why does that matter? If rates are historically low, that means you're paying less interest. And I know this is something that you know, but if you're paying less interest, your annual payment is less for your projects with a more minimal millage ask. Also, the reason that these rates are so low is because these are tax-exempt municipal bonds. In the state of Arkansas school districts have extremely low interest rates. They actually have a state guarantee that allows them to be sold as some of the lowest interest rate bonds in the state. And so these would be a fixed rate bond issue, meaning the district would never have to change the interest rate on it for the life of 30 years unless they so chose. And so it's all these sort of factors is how we arrived at the 3.44 and the direction that we were moving. So I'm happy to answer any questions on any of that, or if there's any questions after the presentation, be happy to address them as well. Yes, sir. There is what is referred to as an optional, well, there's two calls that are associated with the bond issue. One is an extraordinary redemption provision. It allows an issuer of municipal bonds to, if they have excess funds left over after a project, to redeem bonds early. And then there's also an optional redemption call. Typically when you issue bonds, especially Arkansas school bonds, there's a 5-year period in which the issuer does nothing but pay. After that period, a school district can so choose to refinance or restructure the bond issue, or they can choose to do nothing. It is the option of the district to do what they please with those bonds. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think sometimes there can be some confusion because you can hear about bond issues that are done by other issuers, and they're referred to as variable rate transactions where it's tied to some, arbitrary, maybe it's tied to the Treasury or LIBOR or something like that. That would not be the case with these bonds. It would be nothing that I would ever suggest a school district get into. And I think that would be a primary difference, because this is not owned by one bank. No, sir. Unless the district so chooses to. Yeah, and so the payment wouldn't fluctuate. Now, if you look at the repayment schedule, there'll be minor fluctuations, and that's just because the bond issue is sold in $5,000 increments. In other words, I can't get it exactly level to be, whatever that payment will be. So it'll be minor, but at the point in which those bonds close and the interest rate is locked, from then and for 30 years, that payment schedule that I hand the district would be the same between now and when those bonds pay off, unless the district so chooses to refinance to save interest earnings, as they've done in the past. I think that may have been a miss. The typical economic life of a building like this, I think that any accounting firm would say would be at least 50 years. So I think that was more like a 10 to 15 year plan that the school district or the state looks at and determines, kind of what you need in the next 10 to 15 years. But no, obviously, as you can see, your district takes very good care of your buildings. That building would be amortized, or the useful life would be much shorter than the amortization of the bond issue. Oh no, this would be a level debt service payment, just like it would be for your home mortgage. There's no balloon or anything like that. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a principal and interest payment. Principal would come due every year, interest twice a year. So So you'd have an interest payment date and a principal and interest payment date. And we would set it up in the manner where, you know, the way the taxes work, where we would have a levy and then collections, and, you know, you're actually back paying. And so the bulk of the taxes won't flow in until actually next fiscal year. So we have to line up the payments to that. But no, I mean, for the most part, if you zoomed out on the whole scale, it'd be principal and interest every year. After 5 years, if they had a windfall of cash, they could absolutely do it. Or if there's excess money left over, you don't have to wait 5 years. That's that extraordinary redemption provision. And again, if anything else comes up throughout the presentation, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Yes, Mr. Palmer, that I was talking about the planning. It's like, you know, for long-term planning, not the life of the building. So when I said 10 to 20 years. All right, we just talked about that. So what will the construction process look like? Excuse me, it will be taking out portions of the high school and building back new. And as we build back new, you have to keep in mind you're talking about building back for grades 9 through 12. So there will be additional rooms available. Right now, there are like 21 rooms in the high school, and there will be 32 rooms once they build. But like I said, that means you're bringing over the 9th grade teachers as well in that. We will, during this process of transitioning while the building is being built, people say, well, what are you going to do with your kids? Well, we do have the process kind of laid out. We will have to use, as it says down there at the bottom, some classrooms at the junior high and at M.D. Williams. We may kind of have to move a little bit, but we have some spaces. We may not be spread out in all areas in the way that we want to be, but we think that we can get our kids on these campuses so that we're not spread out any further than our campus. We will still have part of the math and science wing, the newer portion. It has 4 classrooms and 2 labs, and so we will still be able to use that during the construction process. And then also the Family and Consumer Science building, or as some of us know it, as the home ec building, that is located the closest to the admin building. We would keep it and we could use it for 2 classrooms. Right now it's like a cooking lab and a classroom, but we would make it useful for 2 classrooms. We will also continue to be able to use our business building for their classes, and then our agri building would still be in use as well. So we do have a plan as far as the transition goes of moving students. We talked about the need. I'm just going to kind of reiterate some of this, but I told you about teachers, a couple teachers being housed at the junior high and then using 2 labs at the high school. Like I said, it's a space issue because right now, if anyone needs to use the new labs, they have to make connections with those teachers, kind of swap classrooms so that they can come back and forth and use those. The cafeteria currently is not large enough to house all of our students at one time, which right now, with COVID, that makes it a little more difficult too, because now we're even having lunch in a couple of classrooms so that we can spread our students out even more, and we have more than 1 lunch at this time. We also, as I said, share teachers with the junior high. We have 9th graders at the junior high that we want to bring to the high school, and right now, no space for growth. We talk about security. There are 9 entry points to the high school. I do have a video I'm going to show you here in just a minute that's going to talk about these things, but our students a lot of times have to come in, well, not they have to, they do have to now come in the front, because we are trying to make sure that access points are not just accessible by anybody who walks up on the campus, because that can be a problem. And so we are very cautious about that. Maintenance costs, just keeping up with the building needs. We have old plumbing We have some gas leaks here and there that occur, and our buildings have depreciated out, which the cafeteria, as you see, was built in 1932, the main wing in 1952, and then so on. So there are some older buildings, and like I said, a lot of that comes back to just not having what we need in today's world. Doesn't mean that the buildings did not serve their function in the time, but as times have changed, so have the needs. And so that's one of the things that we look at. I am going to let Grayson come and speak to you before I show you this video at the end. We'll wrap it up with that. But as I said, Grayson is going to be speaking to you about community and our school and how we are all interconnected. Thank you, Mom.
Good evening, everybody, and I want to start by saying thank you for coming out and giving your evening for this meeting, and for those of you who are watching from home. This is an important issue, and we appreciate your time and consideration on it. And I apologize for those of you who were at last week's meeting and you get to hear my spiel again. But like Lisa said, my name is Grayson Bigger, and I am the local economic developer, and I represent Randolph County and the city of Pocahontas, but I also represent Lawrence County and Sharp and parts of Clay County. And you know, we're at a really interesting time, especially for Randolph County. We're in a really unique situation in comparison to most of eastern Arkansas in general. And you know, my work is focused a lot, you know, people say, you know, like, what do you do? And mainly my work is a lot about problem solving and working on projects that are not short term. They take years, and this is one of those. And we have to look a lot in the future as economic developers to say what we want our community to look like today, but what we want it to look like 10, 15, 20 years from now. And education is one of the most critical investments that we can make. And quite frankly, you know, when you look at communities as an economic developer, as a company looking to come into a community, they look at two things. They look, number one, at the bottom line of how much your labor is going to cost and how much is the return on investment, because they're investing a lot of money. But they also look at how a community invests in itself. Particularly, they drive around and they look at all of the roads and bridges, and they want to check out the infrastructure, but they also look at the schools. They look at the schools because, number one, most likely they're going to be bringing in families to your community to live, well-paid jobs that they want their kids to have every opportunity, but also they want to know that you're growing the next generation of talent for their community so they have longevity. So quite often when we're sitting in those meetings and you have a company looking at your community and it's getting serious, they want specific people around the table, and always are K-12 and higher ed. And they want to know not only what your seniors and juniors are doing, they want to know what your 7th graders, your 8th graders, your 9th graders are doing, and they want to see the facilities. And sometimes they want to talk to students to see what kind of education they're getting, how they feel about their community, and if they're willing to stay after they graduate. And that's a scary moment for anybody. Depending, you know, a meeting could go one way or the other based on the experience of a 16, 17-year-old. But it's true, that's what they want to see. And we're really, again, at this unusual point for Pocahontas and Randolph County. We have grown pretty significantly over the past 10 years. We've seen several new industries coming in. We've seen growth in population, which is unusual for eastern Arkansas. And we've seen lots of new commercial businesses. You drive up and down any major road in Pocahontas right now, and you're going to see commercial businesses going up, which is exciting. Okay? And last year when COVID hit, it was my worst nightmare, because I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to lose business. We're going to have industries close up and leave town, and people are going to lose their jobs. And the exact opposite happened. Everybody got busier. There wasn't a manufacturing operation in Randolph County that did not grow. And that came with its own challenges. So we, like a lot of places across the country, are at a historic workforce shortage. Some places will tell you that it's because nobody wants to work anymore, and they're making more off unemployment. And that there may be some of that going on here. But our biggest issue is that we're not being able to keep up with workforce demands. We're seeing these companies grow faster than we can supply workers for them. That's a great problem to have. Last year alone, Pocahontas added over 400 jobs to this local community. Most people were losing jobs, and we gained over 400 jobs in this small town. And the census also reflected this information. So looking at the apportionment maps, and if you haven't done that, I highly encourage you to go and look at those apportionment maps for Arkansas that they've proposed, because they are staggering and they scare me, quite honestly. If you look across eastern Arkansas and down into the Delta, all the way across the south part of the state, you will see every district in the state is just losing population. And not a couple hundred, thousands, tens of thousands of people are leaving eastern Arkansas and leaving the Delta. And there were only 3 counties in eastern Arkansas that both the county itself and the county seat gained population in the 2020 census. That was Craighead County, that was Greene County, and that was Randolph County. Nobody else in eastern Arkansas gained people like we did. We should be celebrating that. We should be excited about that. But when I look at that map, I think we are just one census away from bleeding people like everyone else. And the only way that we can stop that kind of workforce shortage is by investing in education and investing in our young people. Number one, so they feel supported and they want to stay, but that we're also attracting good jobs here. When we look at education and growth, it's so important to align those two together, because we can't just keep recruiting companies to the area. That would actually be doing a disservice to the businesses that are already here, because we'd just be trading employees around. But it's also not an equitable approach to growth, because you have a few people that are having a great experience and are gaining economic mobility, and then you have lots of other people that are still down here. So we would actually be doing a disservice to the people of this community and to our businesses to keep recruiting corporations without investing in education and investing in real community growth. And when I say that communities are serious about looking at education, it is the number one thing they look at to see how a community views itself and is going to invest in itself. And I applaud the school district for this amazing project. I mean, it's beautiful. We should be so proud of this, and I can't wait to walk people through this building and show that this is what the people of Pocahontas think our young people deserve. I cannot wait for that moment, for that next company to come through and do that. But I want to be able to do that at the high school level too, and that's where they're going to want to go. They're going to want to see our junior high, they're going to want to see our high school. They're going to want to see the STEM labs. They're going to want to see the athletics, and athletics is important. They're going to want to see the Performing Arts Center and know that you're going to be attracting people to the area with that. So now is the time for us to be investing and doubling down on everything, not just to grow, but to protect what we have, because it is an anomaly. I can't stress that enough. When I go talk to people at the state, they're still kind of floored by the census results to see that Pocahontas grew almost 12% over the last 10 years. And we became much more diverse. 12%. Our county grew over 3%. Most cities around us lost that much, 10%, 20%. It's been heartbreaking to watch my colleagues deal with these kinds of problems. And we're all having these discussions. So the other thing that I want to remind everyone is, as we go through this process, I know it's a lot of money. I know it's an investment in community. But the school here has done a wonderful job of, number one, putting back money, going after partnership funding, and really watching the dollars and cents that it invests. We are frugal here at Pocahontas. The school district itself actually invests per student about $8,490, I think, per student. The state average is $10,109 per student. With that being said, our students are still surpassing state averages on testing exams. We're seeing them go to grade school. We've got kids going to Harvard out of Pocahontas, which again, so proud of that. And the school is doing it in a frugal fashion. And the partnership funding topic has come up quite a bit. That's over $9 million that we're going to lose if we don't vote this millage into fruition at this election. And I know there's been some back and forth on if we get to keep it, if we get to lose it. I have confirmed with the State Education Association we will lose it. And we're going to lose it not because it's just the time's up or whatever. We will no longer qualify because our community is doing so well. In terms of growth, in terms of economic status, we will not qualify for that same level of funding. So I would hate to see millions of dollars from the state, which was taxes we already pay, go somewhere else. So I ask everybody to really keep that in mind when you go out and you vote one way or the other on this election. And for us, you know, there are going to be some people that this is a big ask to go up on their taxes again. I know that. We have a lot of farm families, and especially poultry farmers, that in the last 10 years have seen increases in their taxes and real stress on their businesses. But for most people in Pocahontas, the vast majority, most people are going to pay about an extra $8 to $10 a month for this project. And that's on all personal property. That's your house as well as vehicles. So everybody's going to have a stake in this. It's not just going to be a few people doing it because we're all in this together. But those are kind of the number pieces that I wanted to talk to everybody about and really make sure that you are aware of what we're dealing with and what our community is dealing with. We're in an excellent position now, and we should be so proud of where we're at. But with that being said, we have to fight to keep where we are and to keep growing because we are in a precarious, unusual situation. And really investing in education and infrastructure is the only way that we're going to continue on the path that we're on now. But, you know, Lisa talked a little bit, too, about what kids deserve, and that's so true. You know, kids want to feel supported, and making sure that they have great facilities to go to school in says that we care, we support you, and we want you to be here, and we want you to succeed, and we want you to stay here. We are only going to grow by raising our talent, okay? Raising our own talent. I cannot stress that enough. We're not going to be able to recruit tons and tons of people like we're seeing in Northwest Arkansas to Pocahontas. We're just not there right now. But if we keep investing in housing and we keep investing in education, we are going to be able to get through this and to continue growing and investing in our young people so they want to stay here. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have now or at the end after the video is played. But I really want everybody to hold on to that this is not just about a school, but it's really about what the next 10, 20, what the next 50 years for the city of Pocahontas and Randolph County looks like, and truly what our young people deserve. Because they deserve new facilities. They deserve every opportunity in the world to succeed, and we want to make sure that we're giving that to them. So thank you.
Okay, let me, Mr. Helms, we may want to turn off the lights for this. I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, we've been asked a little bit about some of the problems, and we've offered, to take people on tours. Oops, hang on. I may need Mr. Helms up here. Let me get it. Maybe it'll work this way. All right. Let's see. Can you try that for me?
been asked about some of our building, well, the needs within the building, and we did create a video, if we can get it to play. It was working just a little minute ago.
No, I think you're, yeah.
Do you have any questions while we're getting the video? I think our Wi-Fi went out. Okay.
I'll let it buffer for just a second. I will tell you, we put this video together, Coach Burrington and I and Mr. Helms, and it's not a major motion picture, okay? So it's just the facts. It's some things, because like I said, it's some things that people have asked us about, and we wanted to give you some examples of what we have been talking about.
Hello, this is Lisa Bruce, Superintendent of Pocahontas Public Schools. I would like to share with you the need for a new high school. First, safety is a concern. PHS has several entry points, which makes it difficult to secure the building or signature products. Keeping a check on people entering the building is not an easy task. It would be next to impossible to have people posted in these areas at all times. We lock all doors except the front main entrance, but sometimes doors do not close or latch properly, leaving buildings accessible. We have worked on doors and locks, but they do not always stay in working order, or someone could prop a door without our knowledge, allowing for unsupervised access. Some students have to walk between the junior and senior high for classes. We will house grades 9 to 12 in a new high school, which will provide more security as well as continuity for teachers and students. The main entry to PHS is confusing. The office is not easily located. Also, we do not always see people when they enter the building. Not to mention lack of storage for things up in the hallway. Breaker boxes are in the main hall and easily accessible by all. Another safety concern is the handicap ramp outdoors. It is not protected from the weather. Several years ago, the ceiling collapsed in some classrooms in the office. Metal braces are in place to try to prevent the rest of the ceiling from collapsing. The stairs to the cafeteria become slippery during certain weather conditions because of condensation. The older labs are still in use and a working emergency shower has to be available. The shower is working, but it definitely needs updating. An elevator is provided for handicapped use until moving aisles back and forth to the cafeteria. Those using the elevator are exposed to the weather. This is an example of one of the classrooms in the main building. Lack of electrical outlets is a problem. There are classrooms in the main building with only 2 electrical outlets. In our world of technology, 2 outlets are not sufficient for a classroom. Teachers need outlets for computers, monitors, speakers, document cameras, and more. Several items have to be plugged into one outlet. conference room is where the Chromebook charging part is normally plugged in. There are no other outlets available. When it rains, the intercom system does not function correctly. The sound is constant and relayed. Calling classrooms or teachers using the intercom without a topic is not possible. We try to have it fixed before it's obsolete. This is a safety concern. Handicap accessibility is also a concern. The school is handicap accessible. However, getting from one point to another takes thought. There are 3 levels with stairs in the main building. Someone may have to go outside to use a ramp to gain access to the various levels of the main building. For handicapped individuals, access to the cafeteria is by elevator only. Also, there is no storage for items used daily or weekly in the gym. The areas at the end of the bleachers fill with these items during basketball games, leaving no room for wheelchair access. We are in need of more space, less cost of upkeep, and definitely updated facilities. Classroom square footage does not meet the state requirements of current classroom size. The office is short of space as well. Most mornings you will find it full of people. Lack of storage space means that boxes find their way into the office until it can be moved to other areas. The principal and the assistant principal's office are small, making it difficult to hold family conferences or small group meetings. The teacher workroom is used for a variety of things such as meetings, copying, the teacher's printer, staff lunch area, mailroom, custodial computer access, and more. It's not large enough to serve all of these purposes at once. The last storage room is used to assist students as they learn to care for themselves. The library is one of our larger rooms. However, it is difficult to bring classes to the library as the space is not large enough to accommodate 25 to 30 students for a class setting. We also use it for professional development for faculty, and it's not enough adequate space for a true working environment. The career coach's office looks bigger in this photo than it actually is. Some IT equipment is located here, and it was previously used as a storage closet. Storage is a problem in the cafeteria as well. The cafeteria cannot accommodate all of our students at one time. Students fill the cafeteria, and then the overflow students pick up their food and take their food to either the study hall area, the gym lobby, or the courtyard where they're permitted. The nurse's office should have a restroom, but it does not. Since COVID-19, we now have to have isolation areas. We created makeshift isolation areas, but need something more permanent with additional space. The counsel's office is used for testing purposes and for a variety of meetings. The old 7th grade locker room has become a storage catch-all for a variety of items. Leaks are a constant concern. They are repaired, but they return or they show up in a new location. When it rains, water leaks into the gym and down the walls. Repairs are made, but leaks often return. In the older portion of the math science hallway, leaks are common. This classroom actually had a ceiling tile fall in during the excessive rain. Water seeps into the floor between the buildings in the older math science building. The coach's office under the cafeteria is a constant source of water problems. After a rain, mud and water wash into the office. In the center of this photo, you can see where a repair has taken place that runs across the parking lot. The water pipe had to be replaced, like others, because of age and brittleness. When it rains, the bucket goes up to this spot in the cafeteria kitchen. The roof has been repaired so many times over the years that there are multiple layers. It is impossible to pinpoint where a leak originates. The water enters somewhere and then works its way through the multiple layers to arrive at this spot. The wall of the gym leaks inside the building when it rains, as well as the drain clogs and water seeps into the locker room. Gas lines have to be repaired on bridge with the blade suits, which leads to additional costs. As you can see here, concrete had to be replaced as well. Classrooms are having issues with floor tiles. Paneling needs to be removed from the family consumer science building and the rooms and offices in the main hallway. The awnings that cover the sidewalk to the junior high have created some issues with erosion. Mud accumulates in low areas. Foundations are a concern. The gym floor has had some decoration as well as other needs for repair. The docks for the repairs have been made. Restrooms are in need of updating throughout the campus. The urinals are very outdated. Replacement parts for newer sinks are hard to find. Believe it or not, parts for some of our older sinks are still available. However, water flow is not that great. The older labs are still in use. The new labs are used as classrooms, so the older labs have been a great help. We are just out of space. Water fountains are going to have to be replaced. After COVID-19, we have to have water bottle filling stations. This is the custodial closet in the main hall. Again, lack of storage is an issue. We also have exposed pipes. Custodial storage under the cafeteria stairs has water inside when it rains. It will run down the steps and into the locker room area. Spaces that house inoperable furnaces and boilers temporarily accumulate items. The shower in the locker room under the cafeteria has a drain that corrodes away. The intercom system is old and does not work properly. Most cover the intercom because the original covering has also gone away. We had to use an intercom during COVID-19. Staff had to go back and forth to the door to assist people. Security is more of an issue today than it was when these buildings were originally built, so a gate had to be installed. Thank you for taking the time to watch and for your support as we move forward to provide the best for our students and our community. Thank you.
I think I made some technical difficulty when I moved the camera. I turned it when I moved this.
All right. After the video, after you've heard from Ms. Bigger, Mr. McBride, we also have our architect here, Mr. Welch, and Anthony is here with Matt Holtz. So you have lots of people if you have any questions. Well, if you don't have any questions, then I guess we are finished. Just a reminder that the election begins the election is September 14th, and early voting begins September 7th, so not very far away. So thank you for your time.